Hello everyone, I hope you're all good. My name is Fabiana Sofia.
My name is Yadiani Gonzalez.
My name is Gabriela Huerzo.
My name is Patricia Escudero.
My name is Andres Cordero.
And today we will be talking about how the brain works and a tour of the brain.
Some of us may ask ourselves, how does the brain actually work? Before we explain how it works, let's talk about what actually is the brain. The brain is a complex organ which controls vision, thoughts, memory, and many other things. The brain does this with the help of the spinal cord that extends from the brain, creating something we could call a central nervous system. Knowing this, let us talk about how the brain actually works. The brain sends and receives chemical and electrical signals throughout the whole body. Different signals control different processes, which then the brain interprets them. Not only this, but some of these signals are kept within the brain, while others are relayed through the spine and across the body's network of nerves. To do this, the brain relies on billions of neurons.
Now that we have that in mind, what is neuroscience? Neuroscience is the study of how the nervous system develops and how its structure and how it works. People who study in this area are called neuroscientists, and neuroscientists focus on the brain and its impact on cognitive functions. Neuroscience, while also being concerned about the normal functioning of the nervous system, is also concerned about what happens to the nervous system when people have neurological, psychiatric, and neurodevelopmental disorders.
Neuroscience has some major branches, some of them being affective neuroscience, clinical neuroscience, cellular neuroscience, behavioral neuroscience, and neurolinguistics. Affective neuroscience studies how the neurons behave in relationship to emotions. Behavioral neuroscience studies how the brain affects behavior or human behavior. Cellular neuroscience studies the neurons, its parts, its psychological properties in a cellular level. And neurolinguistics studies the parts of the brain that affects acquisition, utterance, and comprehension of language.
Now you know some of the branches of neuroscience, let's talk about the brain itself. The brain has three main parts: the cerebellum, the cerebrum, and the brainstem. The cerebellum is located on the back of the head under the temporal and occipital lobes. This part has two hemispheres, the outer portion which contains neurons and the inner portion which communicates with the cerebral cortex. Next part is the cerebrum. It is the largest part of the brain and coordinates and initiates movement. The last part of the brain is the brainstem, which connects the cerebrum with the spinal cord. Now that we're talking about the parts of the brain, why don't we talk about the different lobes the brain has, which are the parietal, the occipital, the temporal, and the frontal lobe. These all contribute to the brain functions.
The frontal lobe is generally where executive functions like emotional regulation, reasoning, and problem solving occur. In other words, the frontal lobe oversees all of our complex thinking. Then we have the parietal lobe that is behind the frontal lobe and is responsible for integrating and processing sensory information. This includes temperature, touch, pressure, and pain. Thanks to this lobe, we're able to do many things like discern from touch alone. Temporal lobe also contains regions which are dedicated to processing sensory information, but mainly hearing and recognizing language. This lobe helps us process while we hear. And finally, occipital lobe, which is in the back of our heads and is related to vision. It's responsible for visual perception, including color, form, and motion. That's why our parents tell us to be careful with the back of our heads, because it's a very sensible area and it's important for our daily life.